Right, let's do it.
Let's do it. Now.
Okay, I'll wait until I get
All right.
I don't know what to do. Oh,
You see it?
yeah, hold on. Yeah,
There we go. There you are.
it's it is me.
It is
Yeah.
you. So, on that note, hello everyone, and welcome to another brand spanking new episode of Tea Time Talks. And today, as you can see right there, I'm joined by my brother from another mother, as I love to call him, Mr. Graham Hunter. How are you?
Dude, yeah, I'm okay. I'm a little bit, as you know, confused by the technology that you've mastered to let us do this.
I don't know about mastering it,
And,
but
I'm sitting on top of my roof, again, as you well know. When you say how are me, it's always a long answer, but there's like, we're just out of camera shot on my phone. There's a little bit of double back sticky plastic linking my phone to a little metallic pole. So it's really high tech here in Barcelona, Semra. But I tell you, it's
you're a
lit.
real MacGyver, eh?
I am a MacGyver. And there's going to be a trick ending. So it's lifted my day to be able to talk about football and mad things with you on Tea Time Locura.
Yes, definitely. So before we dive into that, I do have to apologize again for my faux pas. The last time we tried to do this, you talk about my mastery of technology, and
Get
clearly
out
I
of
dropped the
here.
ball when I tried
Hey,
to
hey,
get you in
listen,
vision last
Semra, if
time.
it had been left to me, we'd have been communicating via sketches or one of these flip books. So technology, like, don't ever, when you're on a thing with me, don't ever apologize for anything you've done technologically because you're like fucking Yuri Gagarin compared to me. I'm a caveman and
Oh, God.
you're a space woman.
Well, in any case, I'm glad that we made this work this time, and I found a way to get you up on screen with me in vision, because that is what was important. And it also gives me a perfect excuse and another opportunity to talk to you about you and to do something a bit different and to, peel back the layers of the onion, so to speak, to know all about who you are. So, why don't we start with the very beginning? And, anyone who knows you knows that you're incredibly passionate about football. You always have been. You exude that passion in everything that you do, whether it's your writing, your punditry, commentary, whatever, what have you. So when did that whole love affair with football, when did it begin for you?
Like, first of all, I am an exuder. I don't know when I made the choice not to keep much hidden in life, but right from when I was a kid, things just sort of came out. If I felt it, I said it, I did it, and I didn't much care what people thought about me, which led to a lot of tough times when you're a kid because people didn't like it. I certainly wasn't liked. I was a target for people to punch at school when I was a little kid, and so that's been with me since for life, and I'm resigned to the fact that some will get switched on by it and some won't. And that's okay. And football, it's hard to explain. Except I always loved playing it, and I remember playing it really early in my life, and I remember just liking seeing what I could do with the ball. So in the back garden or the front garden, we'd play three and in, which is, you got a keeper and two out, and the two out are trying to beat each other and score three goals, and three goals you go in and you turn around. Or in our back garden, which was really small when I was younger, there was a coal shed because the house was powered by coal in them days, and next to the coal shed, there was a washing line with two big poles, and you could cross to it wasn't a cross, it was a chip. So the person in the middle had to head or volley, and the person in the goals had really little chance if you connected with them, save it. And doing this, I'm talking in 69, 70, 71, 72 in terms of years. And you know, gradually as we watched the first World Cup that I'm conscious of, which was 1970, if you scored a goal, you would shout Pele, and you would mimic the commentators we had in Britain when
It's
when
brilliant.
Pele dominated that. Not only the first World Cup that I was conscious of, but I don't think the previous World Cup in '66 had largely been in colour, Sam. So
Yeah.
even then, a lot of our programs when I was growing up were in black and white. So the impact on you when you see international teams, and Scotland didn't qualify for seven, England did. That didn't mean anything to me as a 6-year-old kid. But
Sure.
Brazil did. Brazil really impacted on me. The jerseys, the sort of satin blue shorts, the names. If you're a 6-year-old in Aberdeen and you hear words like Tostão or Rivellino or Carlos Alberto or Pelé and Jairzinho. Jairzinho was the name that, for the way it sounded, stuck with me. So I'm imagining that even though my dad in those days was taking me along to Pittodrie, which is it's often people of knowledge call it the eighth wonder of the world, and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon aren't all that. So Pittodrie for us in Aberdeen is one of the seven wonders of the world. Um, when he started taking me to watch football there, again, it's so alien from what you and I work in, watch, talk about, because he didn't have a lot of money then, so you would wait. It was a reserve game, I think, or maybe the first team game, but you used to wait. We used to play on the beach next to the stadium, him and me.
Okay.
I was the oldest of the kids, and he would take me out, and he would wait until just after half time. They would open the gates for those who couldn't afford to get in at the start. So
Oh,
you
that's
would miss
brilliant.
about 55 minutes, but if you couldn't afford
But
to
you
come,
could still go in and finish
there
the
you
game.
go,
That's
there you go.
that's
And
that's
he took me
wonderful.
regularly to watch my Aberdeen side when the reserve, because in those days there was one stadium, just like until relatively recently, reserves playing at the training ground stadium. That didn't happen. They played at the stadium, and we played in royal blue, all blue, like the Chelsea of 1970-71. So that's where it began. And I remember, I think, the first time I walked into Pittodrie, which is not, then it was bigger, but right now it's a 23,000 capacity stadium, the first in Britain to be all covered and all seated. And maybe like you, maybe this will trigger something with you, and I'll shut up. But even though it wasn't high up and looking down on an amphitheater like some great stadiums, I
Right.
walked in at 3 o'clock one Saturday afternoon in the late 60s. It was only the reserves, and the green of the grass seemed to, it, it's hypnotic. It shimmered. And from then on, I wanted to know which each player was. I tried to memorize their name. We had bubblegum cards then. Did you have them? That if you bought bubblegum
Oh
um,
yeah, of course.
in
Yeah,
packets,
yeah,
you got
yeah,
a
yeah.
card in it. And that was
Yeah.
the early internet, Semra, because
Yeah.
it
No,
gave
you're
you
right.
where he was born. Like, we didn't know where they were born. We never heard their accents. We didn't know how
Right.
tall they were, what they weighed, when they debuted for the club. Those bubblegum cards were like, fucking manna from heaven. They were. So that's where it
Yeah.
started. That it grabbed me before I saw us winning anything, which was 1970, before I understood it properly, and before a rivalry, because when you got a team that you hate or you argue with somebody else and a friend, in those days, early on, everybody supported Aberdeen, so it wasn't stimulated by
Right.
my team's better than your team. I saw it and it hooked me. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then when did you know? I mean, you obviously you're captivated by your team, you're captivated by the sports. You grow up going to games with your dad or on your own or
Yeah.
with friends
Yeah.
or whatever, what have you.
Spot on.
When did you ultimately decide you wanted to become a football journalist and
Nah,
make an actual life out of this? Because it is a lifestyle. It's not just a career. It is a
yeah, but
lifestyle.
when
What you
when
do.
when I made that decision, I was still a kid. I maybe made the decision the first time somebody told me you have to work for a living. So I wanted to be a football journalist from maybe 11 or 12.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I would say that in schools, again, I don't know if this is the same experience as everybody watching or you had, but like you had careers advisors. And, I was an idiot at school. I could do certain things. I was utterly beyond useless at other things. I mean, just, I was the gravel on the ground on certain things. And teachers told me so. They said, like, you can't do this, that you can't do that. What are you good for? What can you do?
Was
So,
that just like a form of tough love or something? Or is that a way of
uh,
trying to, or people just spoke their
no, I
minds? I
think I was
mean,
easy to dislike. And the one guy I remember, typical drawing teacher, went, look, they're on drawing 21, he's on drawing 32, you're on drawing 6, and it's rubbish. Or he might even have said it's shit. And he
Jesus.
was right. He was. He said, You can't do metalwork. You can't do woodwork. You can't do technical drawing. Is there anything you can do? Now, when you're 11, you don't necessarily know that there's a world outside technical drawing. But a couple of years later, you're put in a spot where the careers advisor, or, what a fucking stupid job that is saying to you, what do you want to do? I'm like, football journalist. And it just was innate in me from the instant I learned or began to understand that you had to, in life, you couldn't just be a kid forever. You had to go and earn your money or do something called a career. So that's when I decided. But it took me, even though I would sit at home as a kid, listening to the radio with an old typewriter that my dad had brought home from his office. And as the radio commentator was commentating on Aberdeen winning at Ibrox against Rangers in about, I don't know, 1977 or 76, I would be typing up what I thought of was my match report. And when people have come to me subsequently saying, what do you recommend I should do in order to, and there are many things you can answer them, but I've always said nowadays, watch TV or watch radio. And if there's an interview, type it up to see if you, or shorthand it up, or just note it up as best you can, as quickly as you can in real time. Tape it so you can go back and cover up your mistakes and correct your mistakes. And then write the interview, or watch a match and then write the match report in real time. Like, give yourself 20 minutes afterwards, or if you want to do a runner, as they used to be called in the old days, do it chunks during the game and practice like that, because it gives you for free the ability to do what old style print journalists had to do. So I was doing that. I was typing away, one Wednesday night and doing a sort of 250-word match report as a 14-year-old or something. And I eventually got into it via hospital radio, which, I won't bore you with, but there was a heap of incredible stories associated with hospital radio, where you go into a dingy little converted studio above a bakery in Paisley, and via landlines, you connect to hospital wards when there weren't multiple radio stations and you didn't get commentary necessarily live. We brought commentary from, Celtic Park, Morton, Hampden for Queen's Park or international finals, and St Mirren. So at that stage, somebody picked me up, recommended me, and I did some agency work, and the Sunday Times picked me up. And so by about 89, I was writing match reports in the Sunday Times, and a guy called Tom English, I hope he's not watching, who's at the BBC now, he would give me interviews, and he would let me write a column down the side, because it was a broadsheet paper, Semra, so it's the old style. I guess you've seen them, but real big broadsheet Sunday Times, not compact or anything like that, not online. Online didn't exist. And so I was writing match reports and features and interviews and a little column in the Sunday Times in Scotland. And like an idiot, I kind of thought that was enough, and I carried on with my full-time job until you and I were talking about Boston just before we came on air. And in those days, I was a rascal. I took a week's holiday.
You were a rascal. You still are, man. That hasn't changed.
You want to have seen back in the days, man. I tell you, I'm so lucky that I'm not behind bars now. Anyway, the long and short is I took a week off from holiday to go to watch the European Cup final in 1994, which I guess was at Camp Nou. And I think it was Barça against AC Milan, right? And for some reason, typical of me, instead of going to Camp Nou, me and my best mate said we'd go back to our Spanish friends who supported Barcelona down in Marbella that we'd met in the World Cup in '82. And we went and spent a week there just getting pissed, lying in the sun, getting to somebody's house to watch the Spanish broadcast of the final, which AC Milan won 4-0 and kind of began the breakup of the dream team. And I came back from that, and I didn't know it, but whatever I'd been doing, I contracted Hep A. And literally about 4 weeks later, I fecked off to America for a month. We're such different ages. I don't know if you remember it, but Interrail still exists in Europe, where you buy a month's pass and you nick about on a train every journey.
Euro or whatever they call it, right? Yeah.
Well, they used to have it in your
the Amtrak.
Well,
right? On
no,
the
but
East
worse than
Coast
that,
in
baby, worse than
particular.
that.
Worse?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, our train systems have never been very good in
You,
particular in the US,
well, you
so
could buy an Amtrak for the skies. So it's obviously
okay.
long before things went badly wrong with what happened with planes being hijacked in the States. But you paid what I remember was about $325, and you had a month free air travel. So we went to the
Okay.
World Cup, my wife, my brother, and I, because Scotland didn't qualify to follow Ireland. And we lived in the States for a month, just
That's
nicking
awesome.
about. And you turn up to an airport. Every flight was standby. So
Yeah.
often you turned up and you maybe didn't get on. You had to wait 3 hours for the next one. But effectively, you flew free every time. So we nicked about the States, just going crazy. And I, because of the hep I'd picked up 3, 4 weeks before in Marbella, I got really ill. I mean, really ill. Typically of me, I drank my way through it and became like a wraith. I mean, I was like that. And I remember in Orlando for the Mexico Ireland, I think I genuinely thought I was going to die. I
Oh,
thought
with the heat and the humidity and
no, but
everything,
yeah,
imagine.
combined with being
Well,
ill, ill,
exactly,
ill,
combined
ill,
with being
yeah,
ill, I mean,
that you're
is
right. It was
it's a
that
recipe for
I don't know.
disaster.
I don't know if they still do it, but they had showers as soon as you walked in. As soon as you walked into just a constant shower of cold water. So you
Right.
walked away soaking wet, but it helped you cope with the humidity and that was great, man. But so when I came back from that, I went, geez, that was a little hello from the other side. And I'm not going out with a fight. And I'd kept all the Scottish newspapers from the World Cup in my home to come back to. They were ordered, so they arrived. I read them and I went, this is shit, man. These people can't write. This isn't football. And I went, I can do better than that. I walked in that day to my job, quit my job, walked out, and then a whole series of mental things happened, one after the other, that meant that from walking out of my job in 1994 to early
Yeah.
1997, I was the chief football writer in the Daily Mail in London. So things went crazy.
Well, and you did some incredible things during those 3 years and throughout the 90s as well, didn't you? In terms of interviewing some of the biggest names, the biggest legends in the history of football, Johan Cruyff, Van Gaal, was it Ronaldo, Sir Bobby Robson. I mean, all of those people. I
It,
mean, that is an incredible ascent to being one of the best football
it,
journalists around, really.
no,
I
no, no.
mean, well,
I honestly, look, I'm not one in a million. I'm one of a million, and I'm lucky in that I can communicate, and I'm determined. There's not a lot else that separates me from, anybody could have done this job. Anybody could have followed this path. The one thing that I do is I get lucky a lot,
but
and
you
I
also
take
create your own luck too, you know?
well,
I
if you
mean,
work hard and you
yeah,
really believe in what you're doing,
yeah.
sometimes that luck falls to you more regularly.
Exactly.
I
The
accept, but
stars align for you, and you
well, they
know,
seem to have
and
aligned a lot, Semra. There's no joke,
yeah,
and I know we're in an interview where you said you want to hear about me, but I, I I'm chary of telling the stories because it sounds, I don't know, it sounds like braggadocio and whatever. But the madness of the day when I'll go back to, I'll start with what I was going to say when I
sure.
said one of a million is that, really regularly I've had either bosses or people who employ me who seem to think, yeah, I believe in you. You can do this. So even though we fell out later, I had a boss at the newspaper who went, yeah, that's a great story. I'll send you to that country. You're leaving tomorrow. You're leaving now. I'll pay the fare. I'll give you some expenses money, and you'll go on the slightest whiff that we might be able to get that interview, get that story, that this game is crucial, that issue is crucial. And that is not the way that even then journalism was going. It's not the
Right.
way it is now because you got a lot of
Definitely
people
not now. Yeah.
who won't be freed from their key. Look, so you go, an example is you go around the country interviewing people in LaLiga, and that brings difficulties. We both agree because technologically it can be hard setting it up. If you do it outside, the noise, the sun, do you get the right crew with you? Is the guy you're speaking to? Because usually so far it
Of
hasn't been
course.
the women's team so far, but so is the guy you're speaking to. Is he in a good mood? Did he kick his arse at training today and he wants to go home? So the jigsaw of challenges that presents you, and it's good. It's what we thrive on. But um, now people are looking for anodyne homogenous experiences. There's a press call, or um, there's a press release,
Yeah.
or there's a recorded statement, or so access then wasn't necessarily automatically easier. There were different things that made access difficult. I'll give you two examples, but I mean, two of a myriad. One day I was reading World Soccer, that magazine that started so many people's careers. And before the internet, if you read it, you could find out what
Yeah.
was going on in Romania or in the Ivory Coast, and you couldn't otherwise. So I read a little article on Jean-Marc Bosman, and Bosman had been in trouble with his case effectively against UEFA, also against the Belgian authorities, but effectively he was challenging UEFA. And he'd been in trouble with them for, I guess, by 95, 2.5, 3 years. And for the majority of those years, he'd been impoverished. He'd had no salary. He'd taken to drink. We didn't know this exactly, but he had taken to drink. He was on his way to becoming an alcoholic. He hadn't gained so much weight as he has in latter years, but his wife had left him. He'd have to sell all his belongings and move back in with his parents. Only some of which was known. Not all of that was known. But
Yeah.
World Soccer reported in a way that I hadn't seen before. Before, everybody had just said, there's this guy, Bosman, and the issue is, and nobody had really put that light bulb on above my head saying, this is a human issue. This guy's in the shit. So I
Yeah.
phoned my boss one night after reading World Soccer, and he was at home. And this was in the days where, honestly, again, I don't imagine you've experienced this, but there was no internet flight booking. You had to wait. I thought you had to wait until 9 a.m. until a travel agent opened.
Oh,
And
I remember days like that for
what?
sure.
Well, how would your shock have been then if you imagine this? Boss, I think Bosman's a great story, human story.
Yeah.
And I give
Yeah.
3 bullet points, and he went, great, great, great. You be
Go
at the
for it.
airport. You're flying out at 6:30 tomorrow morning. And literally, I was like, was he fucking on the heart, the fortified wine or something? And I was like, the travel ATMs won't be open. He's like, oh, don't you worry about that. Be at the So right
Yeah.
enough, they had a 24-hour. That's how idiotic it was. They had a 24-hour travel line. I left from Glasgow at 6:45 or 7, I don't know. Flew in, Belgium's an hour, blah blah. So I have Bosman's home number, his fijo, and I'm stuffing centimes into the payphone.
Right. Until he picks up the phone,
Brussels Air.
basically.
He he does pick up the phone. He's speaking in French. My French was rudimentary then. I managed to convince him who I am, what I've done,
Yeah.
where I am. Can I have an interview? No, no, no chance. I'm like,
Wow.
and all I saw was fucking. All I heard in my head was Alex Ferguson's attitudes, which had been in Aberdeen for my formative years, and I had
Right.
gone, if they can be like that, I can be like that. So I
Yeah.
was like, mate, hold on a sec. I wasn't pushy, wasn't this tabloid journalist. I was like, listen, I've come all this way. Your story really matters to me. Why are you
Yeah.
saying no? Come on. Like, if I come across to you and tell your story, it'll be the better for you. And he went,
Right.
how much money have you got? This is all like this. And I'm frantically pushing some of that fucking money into the. And I'm like, I've got 31 francs. He said, okay, I'll take it. Get on the train to Liège, come over. Long story short, he picks me up in a black BMW, screeches into in front of the Gare de Liège, and takes me to his mum and dad's home. We go up these mad stairs, twisty turning, like a turret in a castle, wooden steps and wooden banister. And we get in there and we start the interview, and I've got somebody who translates it from French and English waiting for me back at the EU Parliament and back in Brussels. But I can conduct a conversation in French. I can understand some of what I'm hearing, not all, and it's done at such a.
Sure.
And then the phone's ringing, Semra, and it's ringing. We're about 35, 40 minutes into and the phone is ringing off. And he tells him, just leave it, just leave it. I'm talking, and it rings again, and it stops, and it rings again, again. And she goes, I want to pick this up, and we're in the middle of a sort of the royal family shouting across from the sofa to the kitchen, and she picks it up, and I think because she went silent, we kind of stopped. And she came running through like this. She said, You've won. You've won your
Oh
case.
my God.
The verdict's come through. And that's AP or Agence France Presse. It was one
Right.
of the big Reuters style agency
Right,
saying,
agencies, yeah.
we've had an agency reporter at the EU court, your verdict is, and you've won, and they want to interview you. And the same guy who, I don't know, 3 hours earlier, I've been on the phone, never heard of me, wanted my 31 francs for the interview, went to his mum, I'm not speaking to them. Tell them to go away. And I'm
Right.
speaking to this guy. He
Wow.
told me that he would tell my story. He's come all this way. We're in the middle of it. I'm not speaking to them until tonight. This guy gets my attention now. He said to his mum, hang up on them.
Wow. That's a hell
And
of a story.
it was. So I report to London. I was there. He won, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, the 2 day margin you had to translate this, get the notes in order, and write it as a 1,000-word inside spread and a back page story.
Right.
He said that you're filing tonight. You got to get to Brussels. You got to find your woman who's the translator. You got to get it translated. You got to take the notes and write. I do it, and
Yeah.
it's the national inside
And it
spread on
becomes an
back page.
exclusive and
It
everything as
was.
well
It was.
too.
I
So
was there, and I was,
yeah.
and that is like, your fairy
Yeah.
godmother tapping you on your shoulder, and it made my career at that newspaper, and it just went on and on. And the other one I was going to tell you about was '98 in the build up to what was the cup UEFA Cup final in
Right.
Paris at Parc des Princes. Inter playing Lazio. I just said to my boss, "This is a good story because blah blah blah," and I go. And the day before, for whatever reason, our train from Paris to Versailles gets held up. We miss the press conference. We're stuck on a train in the middle of nowhere. Versailles is, pardon me, I'm sorry, where Inter are staying. And for some reason, I've decided that it's Inter I want to write about rather than Lazio. And we in those days, Semra, like now, wandering into the team hotel before a European final, it
That's
doesn't fucking
impossible.
happen. Those
It's
days in
impossible.
this Versailles hotel, you turn up, there was some form of security. I went like, I'm here for the press conference. They're like, well, it's finished. I'm like, well, I want to go in anyway and see if I can find any of the players. Okay, knock yourself out, baby. And I walk in and we wander around and it is finished. And we go to the bar. There's Taribo West sitting at the bar having a little
Amazing.
a little coffee. I'm like, all right, Taribo, mate. And he's like, this looks like one of my kind of people. We sit down and I'm like, listen, pal, I've missed the press conference. Any chance? He said, knock yourself out. And he's Nigerian, so he speaks very good English. And we sit and we talk. And it's an interesting interview because he engages. It's one on one. And I say to him, because I've watched one of the fixtures earlier in the season where Lazio pumped Inter. I said, they did you this season. He's like, yeah, let me tell you, tomorrow it's not about winning, it's a war. Yeah, I will go out there, I will take legs, I will take bodies. I'm like, okay, whether you do or you don't, this makes great copy. And so I
Right.
turn up at Parc de France. It's a beautiful game. Lazio are good, but Inter are. Samarano, I think, scores. Certainly, he plays. Ronaldo scores. Inter just super quick. I mean, they're powerful and they're winning challenges. They're going past people. They dominate the game. And Lazio are like, whoa, what happened to this team? And they're 3-0 up. And after 82 minutes, I'm like, okay, after my big article about Taribo's quest for vengeance and I'm going to take bodies, I was like, Taribo, man, you done me. You let me. There's a challenge. I forget against whom, but it's against Casiraghi, Pierluigi Casiraghi, who's the centre forward for Lazio. And Taribo's coming up. There's a ball arriving here. Casiraghi back to go. Taribo coming in behind him. It's a nothing challenge. Typhoon Taribo
Oh my
takes
god.
Casiraghi. Casiraghi's like a rag doll, arms and legs going everywhere. The referee comes up to Taribo and goes,
Red.
if I had 20 fucking red cards, you'd be getting 20 of them. And he walks off towards the tunnel and up there. I swear, he doesn't look, but he just kind of goes up to the press tribune.
Like looks for you.
So man,
That
you,
is a
you can't
wicked
make luck like
story.
that. So look,
That is
mad things
wicked.
happen and they help you grow.
God, I'm kidding. And believe me, I had plenty of follow-up questions, but I would love to
You got
Love to get
Taribo
in
on the
some
line.
questions. Yeah, it's like surprise. No, but I've got some fans of yours. They have some questions for you, so I want to make sure I get them in there.
Yeah.
You know, so Paul Jones had asked a question. This one I imagine will hit quite home for you, very personal. Did you go to the 1983 Cup Winners' Cup final between your beloved Aberdeen and Real Madrid?
Paul, Semra, Paul, it will hit home because I'll try to make the story short. When I went to the World Cup in '82, it was at the height of the Falklands War. The British government had sent out a national warning. We advised fans not to go to Spain for the World Cup because a lot of Spaniards feel sympathy with Argentina. And I'd never been abroad before. I didn't have any money. I was 17. And I kind of just said to my parents, I'm going to the World Cup, bollocks here. And I decided over that when I was sweeping my uncle's chemist shop floor one night in summer '81. I was like, yeah, I'm going. And my best mate said, yeah, I'll come with you. And he was even younger than me. And my parents were dead set against it. They were like, you've been arsing around for your first year at uni. You failed some exams.
Were they not in favour of you becoming a football journalist?
So a football journalist, maybe. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, definitely. Well, my mum was. I was going to become a lawyer. I was studying law. In my 6th year at school, I got super grades and I got straight into law and it was easy. And even when, after my first year of law, the tutor said, look, you've not passed this subject, but you can carry on the next year if you want. I went, no, I'm not doing it. I don't like it. I didn't like anything about it. So going to the World Cup was not only divisive in my family. We got involved in, we were arrested at gunpoint twice. There was a guy who wanted me to go and work on his drug smuggling boat. I locked 300 people into our youth hostel by mistake, and they couldn't get out for hours. And we had how would I best? We made some diplomatic relations between us and Denmark. Some Danish women from Copenhagen, particularly, that moved into their flat for a couple of weeks. It was a month. It was a real old month. It was incredible. I got my first hairdryer treatment from Sir Alex Ferguson in the middle of a hotel reception, and so I wasn't popular when I got home. And really, I wouldn't have said that. I healed the friendship with my father for a long time. So by 1983, I was taking a year out. I was working as a now. Are you sitting down carefully here? Because you won't believe. Is this
going to knock me out of my chair?
You won't believe that I'm capable of a position of such responsibility. But I was the quality controller in a pine kitchen workshop. Yeah, it's like.
They clearly didn't know you very well in the high.
Yeah, there you go. It's like making Birkin hair brain surgeons. Anyway, nothing burned down. And I was earning my money, and I went to every home game in Aberdeen's run towards the final. And I can't remember being happier at a football occasion than when Aberdeen beat Bayern Munich in the quarterfinal in the manner that we did. And then when it came to Gothenburg, it was far away. It was expensive. There weren't cheaper flights. There were no Ryanairs or EasyJets in those days. Flights were going, easily at 500-600 quid a shot, which would be 2-3 grand now. Aberdeen was a rich city because of the oil. Since the late 60s, it was the European oil capital. And I didn't have any money. And I said to my dad went with his two best friends in a little chartered plane, it's like a 10-seater. And he was like, well, this plane's full. And as far as lending you money to go chase yourself. He said, I didn't want you to go to the World Cup a year ago. There you go. Learn your lesson. I'm not fucking helping you. So I couldn't make it, Paul. And that's the reason why. And fair play to my dad for standing up for his principles. I mean, I wish I'd been there. And I wish I'd known at that age what I knew relatively quickly afterwards. That you go, if you have to, anybody who knows me subsequently will go like, yeah, look, why didn't you steal a rowing boat? Or why didn't you just swim? Or, because that's what I'd have been saying to them. In a couple of years, I'd learned that you just go and you make things happen. But at that stage, I was so skint that, me raising 600-700 quid in order to get there and back, even if I slept on the streets in the rain, that was like, asking, the La Caixa for a bridging loan of 3 million right now. They're like, there's the door, son. So Paul, I watched it on TV. And boy, we were good. And subsequently, when I learned Spanish, I read El País, and it isn't just what the dandies thought about that game. El
Yeah.
País, and on the morning after the game, and in the day after that, were like Aberdeen should have won in normal time. They were exceptional. All the Real Madrid players coming home on our flight afterwards said that they were well beaten, and so I was like, in 1983 in Spain, El País reported on Real Madrid being well
Yeah.
beaten. That's some
Yeah.
performance, Emma. So, Paul, it's a long answer, but it's a true one.
All right, brilliant. So we've got another one for you. This is an interesting one, actually, from LaLiga Gav. He
Uh oh.
says, "Uh oh, No, actually, I like the question. I think it's a good one. He says, with you being a dandy, is there a stadium in Spain that feels like the Pit? I don't
It
know,
can happen. Yeah, it can happen.
like Rayo,
it well,
maybe.
yeah.
I don't
No, okay,
know.
I don't want to. I'll never lie about my club, Semra. Rayo are such noisy, um, buccaneer fans that the atmosphere at Todri is different. I have to be honest about that.
Okay.
But when I went to when Villarreal were beginning to climb and beginning to show what they were made of before the stadium got remodeled, there was a feel about, God, we're a regional team, but we're becoming able to take on anybody. And it wasn't a raucous stadium, but when they were on top of winning, you had that feeling about an entire community, which you get in one club places, an entire
Right.
community being behind it. And if I made a comparison, I mean, Gav knows he's one of the guys that keeps us honest, Sim, right? You know him pretty much as well as I do. That we have fans of La Liga who probably know Liga at least as well as we do, and
Yeah,
who are
for sure.
devoted to it. And Gav's got a really special story about what football has done for him, for good and bad, and why he
Okay.
is like he is now. But he'll know, and also Richard Plasmala, who flies over from Huddersfield and
Yeah.
goes to every ground in Spain, watches this. And I can't remember if you've been to the Riazor, but when Aberdeen in '83, when we were beating Europe, all comers in Europe, and then '84 as well, because we beat the European champions Hamburg to take the UEFA Super Cup. And I don't know if it's widely known, Semmer. In fact, I might be revealing a state secret here, but Aberdeen is the only side in Scotland to have two European trophies and two UEFA stars. Just to make that clear. The Riazor, when I went, sorry about that.
No
When I went
worries.
up, there and they were playing European champions, I went to the first leg. They played Milan at San Siro, and they were outplaying Milan by a long way and 1-0 up. And then suddenly, particularly Kaká, Cutlass, just a swathe of runs and passes and dribbles and assists. I think he scored, and I'm pretty sure they win 4-1. Milan having been outplayed, and you think, well, that's a shame. But the Riazor's left. Let's see what happens at least. And I went to Riazor that day, and it's famous that Depor won 4-0. And that's the closest to the peak Pitodri when we were like, if somebody turns up, it doesn't matter who they are, we'll beat them. And
Yeah.
that's a rare feeling in sport. Maybe
Yeah.
the big clubs sometimes feel it, but for any other club to go, it doesn't matter. We're going to win. You go each time, you pay your money, and that reassured that night against Milan. That's the closest in Spain I've been to saying this seaside town, which is not a giant population, which is knocking Goliaths over again and again, and the stadium is a bit rickety. That's the closest, Gav, by easy distance.
It is a very special stadium, isn't it? A very special ground, and also a very special club as well too. And if football does eventually resume, which obviously it will, at least in terms of finishing up the season, maybe we'll see them back in the first division next
It
year
would
as
please
well
me too.
too.
I agree
It
with
would
you.
be it would be fantastic to have
Yeah,
them back, to
yeah,
be
yeah.
quite honest. But getting back to you again, and I want to pick up a little bit where we left off about your incredible ability to be able to warm to players, because you do. I mean, you are naturally a very a charming person who draw people to you. You really do. And I think because you're compassionate, you're empathetic with people, but that passion, again, I think it attracts people and football players and so on. And so throughout your career, after you moved to Barcelona, I mean, you came at the peak of football in the country, not just for the club, but for the national team as well. And you found your way in dressing rooms, at Champions League finals, at the World Cup, with all of these players, rubbing shoulders with them. I mean, how did you gain their trust? Because it's not easy to do, especially maybe being an outsider, being Scottish, not being Spanish, because there is always a little bit of, heading butts between Spanish journalists and players. But they really did seem to embrace you, and they still do today, right? I mean, from what I can tell, you still maintain a very nice relationship with Xavi. And that's, that speaks volumes to what they think of you and how much they respect you. So, I mean, how did you establish and foster those relationships and to end up in those places like dressing rooms?
I'm honestly not entirely sure, because I know for a fact the things I've done, the words I've said, the deeds I've done that have ended up working for me could just as easily have gone wrong, because I'm an odd creature and I don't mind, I don't really try to hide that.
Yeah, but aren't we all in our own ways,
I don't know. No, I think a lot of people in our position adopt a guise, a shell, and I think it's one that is probably proven to be successful in communication or in broadcasting or in written journalism. And I don't know if I'm just contrary or I just stick to being me, but I do know, in all honesty, I'm serious. Because I remember arriving here, like for example, in England, I remember doing the same things before I'd ever been on television, which was about, I don't know, 98 or something like that. I remember the first time I did a late night Sky program, which was Hold the Back Page, I think it's called. It was. And the very next day I was at West Ham, and Harry Redknapp was the manager. And West Ham's foyer, as you came in, was really small. I mean, compact small. And it could be crowded and busy on match days. And we had to cross, I think, from coming down the stairs in the press box to where the press room was. So you were in an area that nowadays you'd never get near. And Harry Redknapp was on the stairs coming down. I just saw him and he went, "All right, Graham." I'd never met him. We'd never spoken before. Excuse me. But I've been on television. So one, if you strip, if you're honest in that answer, and you strip away anything that you do yourself, I've always believed that if the football community see you on television, either reporting or talking about football or expressing an opinion, and you don't make an arse of yourself, you don't come across Johnny Big Ball.
So an honest, no bullshit,
I think
engaging kind of approach.
I think if you speak, I find myself speaking in a way that's different from, and it's sincere, from a lot of certainly the written press. Certainly maybe not in Spain. Maybe that's part of why I left Britain, but from Britain. And when I say what I think, there is no doubt it can also cause opprobrium. It's not a golden ticket. But across my career, what has helped me is when I talk about football on television, when compared to reading black and white newsprint, when you see something and you listen to him and you're like, well, I don't necessarily agree with him, but he hasn't arsed that up. Or that's right, I agree with that. That has helped me gigantically. And I'll tell you another thing as well, stripping credit away from myself, because I think that's important, Semra. I mean it. When I was in, this is back to the madness. I remember being in Casablanca for me and was it Bogart? That's right, me and Bogart. We were the stars of that picture. I was in Casablanca for a triangular tournament between Cameroon, England, and Belgium prior to World Cup '98, and we were sent there as a press pack, and we were living in La Manga, where England were living. And it was the famous La Manga where Paul Gascoigne was overweight, slow, and got a little bit drunk on the last day of training, and looked slow in the games against Cameroon and Belgium, and Hoddle dropped him, and then lied about it and lied about what happened so he could save it for his book because he's an artist. And I remember I went to go and see Cameroon train. So as well as doing England training, which was our bread and butter, I thought I want to go and see. And I went off on my own in an unlicensed cab, and it was about a 40-minute drive. And you get to a part of the world where, and I'm sure it was fine, but you don't know anybody, and the language is a little bit idiomatic, and there are people who will rip you off. And I thought, okay, this is where I was born to be. And I bump into a tall English journalist who I've never met before. He goes, "Oh, I'm scared. Can I stick with you, please? And will we go home together?" I'm like, "Yeah, mate, whatever. Yeah, don't worry about it." So we stick together, and I pay the taxi home. And he's like, "Do you think this guy is safe?" And he's like, "I don't really." And we just do that, and the tournament carries on and off the go now. And when I get pumped from my job at the Mail in 2002, I move over here really quickly. I got an email from him saying, "I remember you from Casablanca. I'm now head of editorial at UEFA. Would you like to come and work for us? Would you like to?" And I'm like, and
what a small world.
Subsequent to Casablanca, I'd been to every big chicken. He was so far. And he sends me that, and he says, "We'd like you to do blah, blah, blah." And I mention that because, and it's important, it really is important. When I got sent in to interview, I mean, name your people, whether it was Iker or Raul or Xavi initially or Piqué or what, you're sent in by an organization that isn't thinking about where's the headline on this? Can we get to slag somebody off? There's been an issue recently, and let's draw their point of view on it. And I'm like, one, there are other people to do that. And two, I'm not, I mean, in the day when I was working in a newspaper, I wanted a news line as much as anybody else, and I'd compete for it. And I even woke the Chelsea managing director up at 1:45 at night and phoning from Wembley because I'd heard they'd secretly completed the deal for Laudrup. And his wife said he's asleep. So wake him up. And he did wake up, and he came and gave me the line, and it was the back page and blah, blah, blah. But once you go out of newspapers, what I wanted to hear about was the person. I wanted them to educate me about football. I wanted to understand better. Why has this team developed this way? Why do you train that way? When you made that spin turn, what was in your head about calculus? Just shit like that. That keeps me happy. And I didn't know whether it would interest anybody else or not. But when you're sent in like that with the white flag of peace, they don't view you as a threatening journalist. And if you're any good, they open up. And from that you build. And they talk to each other. So given the opportunities I've been given, Semra, you'd need to be a jackass not to have benefited from them. You would. So I don't seek any, I don't take any kudos for them. But if you meant what you said, that when I talk now on the podcast interview that I do to coaches or footballers or directors or presidents or whoever it might be, I feel like they've got a secret key to the things that, obviously I wanted to do. You played football at a good level. We want, if we could swap this for having been them, we do that, and then after our career finished, we can still do this. They're sitting there with the golden key to this fabled other land, which actually isn't an invention. It does exist. And if you can get them to open the door and let you join in for an hour, it is fucking paradise. So I'm unafraid, and I don't think this is true of everybody. When I'm sitting opposite somebody, I really want them to open up and relax, talk to me. I completely wear my heart on my sleeve. There's no artifact, there's no pretense. I don't care if I sound a little bit puppy dog. And if you look at the comments in the podcast initially, there's a lot of people going, he's sycophantic. Well, I
hate when people do that, because people forget we're also football fans, just like they are. Why are we not allowed to show our emotion and our excitement in meeting somebody who was a hero or a legend? Or why?
And when we're employed,
like that,
we're employed, we'll sometimes have to be
you have to rein it in a little bit
to somebody that we might not feel a great deal about, because that's the person that your job is. But if you get to choose who comes, like you do you've done Tim recently and Simon and Andrea Orlandi, so you get to say what you want, because this is your And I feel that way too. And one of the things I won't do is I won't feed somebody that I'm talking to bullshit.
Yeah.
If I say something, I mean
You
it.
mean it.
And I do get, I'm overexcitable. I do get like a little bit, a bit sort of Lucasade about life and about people. And I do get fizzy and bubbly, and it's real. And thank God I was given that. My life would be monochrome without that.
And so then from all the relationships that you've built with these footballers and coaching staff and manager and so on, etc., and you've written all of these books, these phenomenal books, by the way. And again, I mean that as well. I'm not just to carry on. It is genuine when I say that as a compliment. And the football
Thank you very
documentary and
much.
everything else. Have those footballers, the people that were involved, have they read the books? Have they watched it back? Have they given you their thoughts, their reactions to it?
I know some have read the books, but it tends to be the case that those I've written about don't read in English. Neither of my two books
Right.
have been translated into
Oh, were
Spanish.
they not?
The
Oh,
Barca
for
book,
some reason I thought that they were.
the
Okay.
the Barca
So,
book, I think went to, I don't know, 30 countries for translation and blah. Spain book, I
right.
don't know, but it did go abroad. Take the Ball is different, and you and I are
Yeah.
really fortunate that we know. I mean, we're fortunate that Simon Hanley put this merry band together and chose us and runs an environment where we can speak about football per se, not about the industry, not about polemic, but we devote ourselves to the football. But we're also lucky in that Duncan McMath worked with us. So if you think about again, things happening to me, I wrote the
Yeah.
Barca book. I thought that's fine. People liked it. There was a lot of feedback. I agree. Commercially, it was nice. And then Duncan, a friend who I know pretty well, but not as well as I do now, comes to me and says, guess what? I can't even deliver the line. This is what robbed me of a great stand-up career. He comes to me and says, guess what I was doing on my honeymoon?
You're
I
like,
was
oh, well,
like,
you can be very imaginative in your responses.
frisbee, Cluedo. He's like, I read your book and we have to make it into a film. Right. Oh, okay. So the film was what? The film we made, the great joy of working with Duncan and his Zoom colleagues meant that when that film was bought by Universal, it went to something like 320 countries. Now we have had feedback from that. Um, we know that the participants in that saw it, and it was on the other night in Movie Star Plus.
Yeah.
So it's available. You can watch it in English with Spanish subtitles, or some of it. Some countries have dubbed it, etc., etc. So yeah, we know Victor Valdez wrote Zoom an enormously moving um, letter, and we not long ago I was with Duncan in London doing some business with Pep's brother, Pep Guardiola, and he
Right.
talked about what Pep had said about it. What's Pep's right hand man, the fantastic Manel, fantastic water polo player.
I was gonna say I can't remember his
Yeah,
name, but I was gonna say the
yeah,
water
yeah.
polo guy. They're joint at the hip. They go
Yeah,
everywhere and do
he,
everything together,
he's
don't they?
been
Yeah.
his consigliere from the start of Pep's career,
Yeah.
and he'd been stunned by it. And Perez said he was on some flight recently where it had been replayed, some transatlantic flight. He said the hairs belt went up in the back. So we know that the participants enjoyed it, but I mean, we were telling their story. Again, we
Yeah.
need to have been jackasses not to make them pleased because we're honest people. We did a good job. But I think what what not moved me, but what stuck with me most, Semra, was we asked these people for help, and although some of them were hard to track down and some of them were hard to pierce their calendars, they all did it voluntarily without any question about a fee or about royalties. And they went, yeah, we trust you guys, not me, but we trust you guys. There was Mark Guillen was involved as well in
Right.
persuading people to come on board, Duncan and myself. And when you get to a level where they trust you to tell their story and they're willing to be involved and it's non-commercial, then you can stop for a little while, about an hour and go, well, I'm quite proud of that. And then you have to sort of slap yourself around the head and move on because, that kind of thing You need to.
Well, sure, your ego can all of a sudden go like this very
Well,
quickly,
well,
and
one of the things I
it can
learned
be your
from
undoing.
a great friend of mine, Lou Martin was Pep he's very close to Pep and has been since they were about, mutually about 20 or whatever. And
Right.
and I remember Lou several years ago in fact, I think it's when he moved from Diario Sport to El País. He texted Pep to say, I've been hired by El País and it's an interview job and a feature writing job. And Pep was like, well done, don't get complacent. And
Didn't he move to Manchester as well
yeah,
to
well, one
kind of
day,
follow Guardiola's time at
one,
City and everything
one
else?
day, one day, Lou was sitting in the Boqueria Mercado. We were having breakfast, and he was a little bit. His wife had been laid off, and he wasn't too happy with his existence at El País. And I said to him, "You should go there. You must move there." And he had issues, family issues that made him say at the time, "No, I don't know. I don't think I can do that because of X." And it was an important factor.
Sure.
And eventually, I'm not saying I persuaded him, but I said, if you reverse what I've done by moving to Spain, like on a whim with no opportunities, no money, no language, no job offers, you'll be doing it in a focused way. You're in with Pep. It's a brilliant project. Win, lose or draw, because this was while Pep was still planning to move from Munich.
Right.
You've got a story there. You can definitely aprovechar. You can take advantage of life over there, improve your English, learn the backbone of UK football. And he did it. And you're right. With Paul Balus, he wrote what I think is a really accessible, really entertaining, fun, but also detailed account of Pep's first 2 years at Manchester City. And Backpage Press published it recently. It's been a big success. It's on the Telegraph's long list of sports books of the year, just recently announced. So, yeah, Lou did move to Manchester, and he commutes between the two cities, Barcelona and Manchester now, which is an okay life, huh?
So we actually have a surprise guest who's joined us. I don't know if he's still here. I hope he is. Naeem,
Oh, the magician, the
the
maestro.
magician, and he has a question for you. Actually, I had a chat with him the other day, and we were talking about some of the best players that he ever played with. Whether it was in Spain or whether it was in England, whatever have you. And he mentioned Gaza, but now he's putting the same question to you, and he's wondering what or who is the best British player ever in the history of the game for you.
Well, like you, Naeem has
This is
put
a
up.
tough one to answer.
No, no, it's easy because, like you, Naeem has put up with my eccentricity and my absolute and utter devotion to Aberdeen Football Club. So
Well,
there's very little doubt in my mind that it's Willie Miller, our
okay.
legendary captain and sweeper. Um, but other people would pull me up on that, I guess. I
Wait,
agree.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Did he play for Newcastle?
No, no,
No.
the,
No,
the
because Simon mentioned someone the other day who was like, you have to ask Graham about him. And I've completely
Jinky
forgotten who it
Smith,
was.
Jinky Smith.
But
I'm sure it was Jinky
okay.
Smith because Jimmy Smith, a Glaswegian who played for
Right.
Aberdeen and who I saw um, playing for the reserves in the 60s just before he went to Newcastle. And Jinky was a magical footballer and somebody who clicked with me instantly, and also somebody who will lead me to my final answer to you in nine, because I recognise that Gaza was startling and could do things that I don't remember in my lifetime an English player, particularly a midfielder, having that chutzpah, that skill, that ability to make and score goals, the elegance. But um, if you're talking about best British, then I think
Willie Miller, you said, right?
Willie Miller. I'd love to say it. Everybody who knows me now is throwing stuff at the screen and laughing at me. Semra, it's hard to choose, but I want to say it like this: people that I trust tell me that Duncan Edwards, who died in the Munich air disaster in 1958 with the Busby Babes, would have been, and I give a lot of respect to that, but I never saw it. I think that Chris Waddle was literally a genius with the ball. Just unbelievable that a man of that physical stature could do things that Maradona would have been proud of. So he's in there with Gascoigne. But if I answer Naeem's question properly, the three candidates, in my opinion, have to be Dennis Law, who's
Okay.
Scotland's only ever Ballon d'Or winner. He's born in Aberdeen. George Best, his playing companion up front at Manchester United.
Right.
And Kenny Dalglish. And I think if you don't speak about those three amongst the deluge of candidates, then you've been taking a mind-altering substance.
So, by the way, LaLiga Gav said that, or Gavin, says that the Waddle podcast was amazing and that was his personal favorite. So,
tiny anecdote from that. When I said to Chris,
go for it.
So when your country won its only World Cup, I said, where were you? You were old enough to remember. I've seen it in 1960. He said, so anybody who doesn't know where Newcastle is, where he was born and brought up, it's right up the northeast tip of England. And he said that he and his mum and dad and I think two siblings, all of whom are like 4, 5, 6, travelled all the way from Newcastle to Watford, just north of London. Therefore, a massive journey without many big motorways in 1966 on a motorbike and sidecar. So, like you ever saw in the Aristocats, where the motorbike.
I've always wanted to ride in a sidecar.
So it's dad and mum presumably a backy, and dad driving, as Chris told it at least, and 3 kids in the sidecar, but like little crazy puppies in motion as they're driving down the streets, crawling over one another and changing positions as they drove. We could have lost one of our. It's that little anecdote and the little anecdote about rooming with Gaza when Gaza with England. They were high up the 5th floor of a hotel that overlooked the street, and there was an auto teller down below. And Gaza used to get eggs from the hotel kitchen and pelt people as they took money out of the like an egg sniper.
I can like perfectly imagine and picture him doing this actually.
Chris was magical. We sat up in his loft that day in his house near Sheffield, whereby as you go up into the loft, which is beautifully converted, it has all his, because he's a music lover, he has all his CDs and records everywhere. And it had little statuettes of Laurel and Hardy, and it had one signed jersey from each of the clubs he'd played at. It was a wonderful place, and I'm glad Gav enjoyed it. But if anybody hasn't listened to that big interview, the Chrissy Waddle interview was a gem.
Yeah. Listen, I want to continue with this thread of music, because I know you are also a massive music lover, and we've been going strong for an hour. I don't know how you're feeling, but I don't want to take up much more of your time. But before we get to doing something very important, I do have one more question for you. If you had to pick a soundtrack that best described your life, your career.
Whoa, what a question. I'm going to steal that for the big interview now. That's a brilliant question. A soundtrack.
Thank you.
By which I'm going to take it, you mean not like a constant interchange of Weller and the Clash. Because I have often said this to people. I've got Ride of the Valkyries playing in my head all the time. As I launch myself into yet more foolishness, you know, I can hear Wagner playing inside my head. If you can think about the Apocalypse Now scene with the helicopters over the beach.
Oh, yeah.
And
Dun, da, da, da,
that's constantly the beat that I live my life to. But I'm going to take your question as to mean a film soundtrack. And I do love my film soundtracks.
It can be any. It doesn't have to be a film soundtrack.
Well, it's going to be. It's going to be, because otherwise it's just the answer's so easy. It's like nothing but the Beatles, Aretha Franklin, The Clash, and Paul Weller. I could as much as I love 10,000 other artists. That's what if. But like it would either be the soundtrack from National Lampoon's Animal House, because that
actually perfectly matches you. That's a perfect description.
I've tried to live my life that way ever since I saw it, which Dean Wormer would say, that's no way to go through life, son. But also, the other one would be the brilliant soundtrack and the behaviour of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Yeah, those two soundtracks, those two film soundtracks would do it for me.
All right, brilliant. So you up for a bit of another round 2 of karaoke because, you know, you are the karaoke king and I am fully expecting you one day to own some karaoke.
We both know that when I say shit like that, we all know it's not true. And it's only me that should say it because it's a pretend boast. I do love it and I miss it. And one of the things that when we all go back to life, you know, we'll be singing karaoke and handing microphones to one another. I see a grim future for commercial karaoke, unfortunately. So unless it's bring your own mic day at the karaoke, I worry about these things, Semra. These things keep me awake at night. When the doors open again, what becomes of karaoke? World, answer me.
All right, so you want to do a bit of karaoke then, at least? Homegrown karaoke. Okay.
I guess we should.
Listen,
I've completely unprepared for this.
Listen, to get fully in the mood, I've also made my makeshift.
LaLiga.
But wait.
I'm waiting.
I need to channel my inner Graham Hunter. If I'm going to do this, I've got to do it right.
Another mothers would be proud of us.
Exactly. So you have picked the song King of the Road by Roger Miller.
And why not?
All right, and why not? So can you hear it?
I can.
Okay, good. I've got to put it up to my headphones here.
Trailers for sale or rent.
Rooms to let 50 cents.
No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes. 2 hours of pushing broom buys a 8 by 12 mama. Man of means by no means king of the road. Oh man, we are just nailing this, aren't we? Boxcar, midnight. Destination Bangor, Maine. Oh, worn out suits and shoes. I don't pay no union dues. I smoke old stogies I have found. Short but not too big around. Man of means by no means. King of the road. I know every engineer in every town. All the children and all their names. And every handout in every town. And every lock that ain't locked when no one's around. I sing trailers for sale or rent. Rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. I ain't got no cigarettes. 2 hours of pushing broom buys an 8 by 12 bedroom mama. Man of means by no means king of the road. Trailers for sale.
Lorraine's almost done.
Rooms to let 50 cents. No phone, no pool, no pets. Ain't got no cigarettes. We did it.
We did it. One way or the other, for better for worse, we did it.
Yeah, but whoever suffered listening to it, I don't know about you, but I've got the dolphins, man. I've got the endorphins. The dolphins are leaping out of the waves inside my what you call that thing? Metabolism. That's it. That's all that karaoke is, Semra. I've always believed. It's like if people knew about karaoke, then nobody would take drugs or alcohol, man. It just makes you feel happy and high, and it clears out your psyche, and you feel better afterwards.
I 100% agree with you, and I have zero shame about doing it. It's all about karaoke, baby.
Yeah, baby.
Right. So, any last thoughts, any last comments you want to say before I
thought you were going to say any last requests, Gringo.
Oh, any last requests?
Look,
if you want, we can go for another one.
I'll say to you, it was nice of you to ask me on again. Nobody usually asks twice. And secondly, well done for putting this together yourself and staying in touch with people who like to hear you talk about Spanish football and talk about guests. And I hope you have a lot of fun until it just calms down and we can get back to work again. But good work to take the time and the effort to put this together. And listen, thank you for asking me. Thank you.
No, thank you, man. Believe me, this would be nothing without all of you guys. I'm so thrilled that you are so on board for doing this and
It's a
joining
laugh.
me.
It's a laugh, isn't it?
It's a laugh. And that's the objective, isn't it? Is to have a bit of fun and to just try and stay positive,
¿Por qué
positive
no?
vibes,
¿Por qué
you know,
no?
all that kind of stuff. So if I'm achieving that and I'm making people happy and helping them feel good, then that makes me feel great. So
Eres
thank you.
milagrosa. Has hecho un milagro. Fantástico.
Thank
Y
you
muchísimas
very much.
gracias.
A ti, a ti.
Viva la
And
Liga,
thanks to
baby.
everybody else.
Viva la Liga.
Viva la Liga. See you guys tomorrow for another episode, a very interesting one. We've got 3 coming up all at once. We've got Gus Poyet. Graham, where are you going? You don't have to disappear.
Okay.
So we've got big old Gus Poyet coming on, along with Andrea Orlandi and Naeem.
Hombre.
All together. I'm going to try and see if I can make this work technologically.
That's a 4-a-side team. With you and them 3 guys, you just need one substitute on and off, and you're going to win some 5-a-side championships.
It's
cool.
going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. So join us for that. You as well, Graham. And we'll see you tomorrow, 1:30 local time here in Spain. Till then, take care, everybody.
Hasta mañana.
Adiós. Hasta mañana.